beneath my chest. Smiles and silence, quiet rest. I watched you move without a sound, loved you softly, never found. The moments whispered, never loud. I stayed invisible in the crowd. All I feel remains unspoken. Every glance, every token. I keep my heart behind the line, loving you without the sign. All I feel remains unspoken. Every word left unbroken. Quiet devotion, quiet pain, hiding love in gentle rain. I memorize the way you breathe, every laugh, the things you leave. I stayed where my shadow could stay, close enough to care. Far away, all I feel remains unspoken. Every glance, every token. I keep my heart behind the line, loving you without the sign. All I feel remains unspoken. Every word left unbroken. Quiet devotion, quiet pain, hiding love in gentle rain. I watched your light from the side, never close, nowhere to hide. Smiles you gave, they weren't for me. I stayed quiet, let you be. I knew my place, I knew my part. Loved you softly from the start. I stayed out of frame, loved in silence, no claim. A quiet heart that held the truth, every moment without proof. I stayed out of frame, fading where you stayed, watching love that couldn't stay mine, respecting the line. I memorized the space you left, hiding feelings I couldn't say. I stayed out of frame, loved in silence, no claim, a quiet heart that held the truth, every moment without proof. I stayed out of frame, fading where you stayed, wishing love that couldn't stay mine, respecting the line. If you ever wondered why I never spoke, it's because love can live beyond the focus. I stayed out of frame, loved in silence, no claim, a quiet heart that held the truth, every moment without proof. I stayed out of frame, fading where you stayed, watching love that couldn't stay mine, respecting the line. I stood where the light never reached, heard your laughter through half-open doors. I learned how to smile quietly, so no one would notice. I wanted more. I memorized the way you breathe when you think nobody's near. I was always in the room, just never who you looked for. I folded my heart like a letter, never sent, never torn. Some love is meant to exist without being born. I loved you unseen, without taking a place. I stayed in the shadows so you could feel safe. I didn't ask, I didn't lead, I didn't cross the line between. I was there, I was true, I loved you unseen. I learned when to step aside, when your world was already full. I stood just out of your way, so your days could open wide. I learned how to move quietly when my heart wanted to collide. I watched you grow into the light while I stayed where shadows hide. It wasn't weakness, it was love that kept me standing aside. I knew when not to speak, I knew when not to stay. Some feelings only survive when they're carried away. So I stepped aside, letting your world keep turning. I held my love inside, soft and undiscerning. I didn't fight, I didn't decide to be the one in your life. I stepped aside and called it love. I smiled when you didn't see, I listened without reply. I made a home out of silence so you wouldn't have to ask why. I was close enough to care, but too far to be denied. Sometimes love means choosing to live a little aside. Not every heart is meant to be held. Some are meant to understand that loving you meant letting go. With open, empty hands, so I stepped aside. No regret, no sign. I kept your peace in mind and left my wants behind. A stain would have changed your sky. Then I did what felt right. I stepped aside and stayed kind. Still aside, but never untrue. I stood close enough to feel your breath, but far from where your heart was kept. No hands reached out, no lines were crossed. Just quiet space, just almost lost. Every step I matched your pace, careful not to take my place. I wasn't sound of you on tired days. I held my feelings like a truth that didn't need to be proved. If love is measured by restraint, then I loved you honestly. Some things survive by staying small, so they don't ask for anything. I was near enough to care, not enough to claim. Near, close to you, but not your name. I didn't break, I didn't plead. I was near, and that was all you needed. Still near, still I felt it every time you spoke, like something eating in my chest. But I kept calm, I kept my place. Some feelings don't ask to be confessed. I knew the line, I knew the cost. I chose the part that wouldn't hurt us. So I kept it inside where it couldn't change your days. Loved you in the quiet, in all the careful ways. I didn't need you to see what I learned to hide. I kept it inside to keep you alright. I watched you laugh, I let it stay. Never asked for something more. I stood right there, but never leaned, never knocked on your door. If love is proof and called it kind. Still here, still inside. I learned your tone before your words, the way you smiled on days were heavy. I stayed close but never crossed. Some feelings live best when they're steady. I felt it rise, I felt it stay. I let it breathe, then look away. So I held it quiet, kept it safe inside, loved you without needing to turn your world toward mine. I didn't need a promise or something to deny. I held it quiet and let it be mine. I listened more than I should speak. I knew the places you were going. I stayed just out of reach, close enough to feel the moment. If love is measured by control, then I gave all I could give. Some hearts are meant to care in silence, so other hearts can live. I held it quiet, no claim, no sound, carried all the truth. I never laid down. You never had to know what I set aside. I held it quiet to keep you fine. Still here, still quiet. I saw the moment coming close, when saying more would change your life. So I stayed calm, I let it pass, and folded feeling into night. I read the weight behind your eyes, knew what my silence would decide. It was a silent choice to love and not be heard, to care not in the way, not in your plans. I held my heart with steady hands and let you be who you became. Some truths don't need to break the air to be the truest part. I chose the way that left you free, even if it marked my heart. It was a silent choice, no blame, no sound. I loved you best by turning down the part of me that wanted more than you could safely give. It was a silent choice to let you live. Still loving, still quiet. I measured every word I didn't say, left them resting on my tongue. I knew the cost of breaking in before the damage could be done. I read the room, I felt the space, I chose the gentlest escape. So I kept a careful silence, held my feelings down, loved you in the margins where nothing falls apart. I didn't need to name it or ask you to decide. I kept a careful silence to keep your world alive. I stayed close without a claim, never asked you where I stood. I learned the art of standing still when moving closer, never would. Some love is shaped by what it spares, not what it tries to prove. I carried mine in I measured every word I didn't say, left them resting on my tongue. I knew the cost of breaking in before the damage could be done. I read the room, I felt the space, I chose the gentlest escape. So I kept a careful silence, held my feelings down, loved you in the margins where nothing falls apart. I didn't need to name it or ask you to decide. I kept a careful silence to keep your world alive. I stayed close without a claim, never